Hey, what's up? This is Matt from Exhumed, and I'm blowing it up on Capital Chaos TV.
This is the Iron Serbian with Capital Chaos TV, and we have Matt Harvey on the phone. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing pretty well. It's a beautiful day. We got a new record coming out, and, life is all around marginally acceptable, so I'll take it.
So how are you? I'm doing great. I'm in Sacramento. The weather is really nice, and I'm alive. It's a good day. And I've been listening to your new album, and I really like it a lot.
Oh, cool, man. Thanks.
Yeah, and some of my favorite songs on the album are, I guess you have a song on YouTube, which is Defenders of the Grave.
Right. That was the first, the preview track or whatever they call it, yeah.
And I really like the Heroine.
Nice.
Overall,
nice.
Just a great album. Overall, I would imagine you're pretty happy with it.
Yeah. I mean, there was a couple things where I think if we had a couple more days in the studio, I might have seen reason and not done a couple of things that I did. I mean, overall, I'm very happy with it. And there's always going to be something that's like, oops, but it is what it is. And I'm overall really stoked on it. I think it's our best record yet so far. So.
And I'm listening to it. I know you're a big Carcass guy, or at least you claim to have been a big Carcass. You have a big influence. I hear some Sepultura on there. I hear Death, but I guess it's all in the ear of the beholder, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Carcass is one of our influences, but I think people, because we have two vocalists and because we use words with more than two syllables, I think people have been really eager throughout our career to be like, oh, you guys sound like Carcass, Carcass, and it didn't really bother me that much until Carcass got back together, and then it was like, oh god, this is really getting annoying. So I'm happy to hear that you're not just oh, new record sounds like Carcass. That's not really what I want to hear, but I mean, hey, like you said, it's all it all depends on the listener. So hey.
How did you, as a youth, how did you get into music?
My dad was a big music listener. I mean, he had a guitar in the house that he kind of knew a couple chords on, but mostly he just was always playing music. And, so I absorbed a lot of stuff just being around my parents, first hearing like, all their music, Jefferson Airplane and Jimi Hendrix, Savoy Brown and Robin Trower and Cream. My dad was a huge Cream fan. And then my uncle he's a jazz fusion musician, and so I remember hearing stuff like Chick Corea or Mahavishnu Orchestra when I was a kid, and my grandmother also was a piano teacher, so it seemed like it was a thing that you could do. You could pick up an instrument and get fairly proficient at it, because I could go to my grandma's house and hear her playing, whatever Christmas carols or little Bach bits and stuff like that. So, then I think when I was about 10 or 11, I kind of started listening to music just outside of what my family was exposing me to, and I was really into like Run DMC and the Beastie Boys and LL Cool J. Like that was kind of like my first foray outside of my parents' music. And then a kid on the school bus was like, "Are you into heavy metal?" And I was like, "What's heavy metal?" And he's like, "Fucking pussy." And I was like, Jesus, this kid is really rude. Like, what the fuck's his problem? I was like, so I decided, I was like, well, I guess now I'm curious as to what it is. And then I, heard it, and this was like 87. So, I heard stuff like Ozzy Osbourne's Tribute and Theo's like Sacred Heart record and Somewhere in Time. And that eventually led to hearing Master of Puppets. And that's when I was like, oh shit, this is what I've been looking for. This is the sound, and from there, kind of just continued to get, looking for, of course, like most kids, whatever was the heaviest, fastest, blah, 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 most evil, so you go from Metallica, and then Slayer, and then Death and Celtic Frost and Dark Angel and Sodom and Creator and Possessed, and then into Napalm Death and Carcass and Entombed and Terrorizer and Carnage and all the records that were coming out right around the change from 89 to 90. I think I must have bought that was the only thing I spent my allowance on was music from like 1988 to 91. And that's when 91 I turned 15, so I could work at the gas station or whatever. So then I started. I actually had a little bit of money, but that was all. That was kind of the progression.
Did you read a lot of fanzines? Did you ever trade tapes with people in the back of the magazines? Were you ever involved in that world at all?
Oh yeah, I mean, before I got into metal, I mean, I've always been a big reader, and I was like comic books was my main thing before that, and so I got into the sort of nerdy kind of organizing and collecting and figuring things out, and researching kind of aspect about it. I was really into tabletop role-playing games and rolling dice and all that kind of stuff. So that sort of led me to more of a academic perspective on things. So I would always be the guy. It starts with the stuff that you can get on the racks, like Metal Mania and Power Metal and Thrash Metal, and then it was the stuff that you could get only at Tower Records, which was like Metal Forces and some of that kind of stuff, or Art Shock. And then from there, once you kind of start going to more and more underground shows, you would find different zines. I remember Dennis Cullen in Redwood City had Atmosphere. That was a good like local zine, and we used to get like Chain Letter and Lesson in Pathology and Comatose and a bunch of different stuff. And when we did our first demo, I think we recorded in December '91 or January '92, somewhere right in there. I don't know. I was a kid. That's hard to remember exactly when it was. But,
sure.
Then we started, sending away tapes in the mail. And, it was kind of like a big part of my incentive of being in a band was, well, if we have a demo, then we can get other bands' demos because I want to hear more demos. It wasn't like, oh, look at this great music we made. It was like, hey, now I can trade to get more demos, And then, of course, the ambition was to release a 7-inch and then, at some point do a record and so on and so forth. I was always kind of a lazy correspondent, though. So usually the other guys in the band were a little bit more on top of the mail than I was. But, whatever they would get, of course, we would all tape for each other. It's like if you heard a demo, that you liked, you tape it for all your friends and gave it to them at band practice and et cetera, et cetera. It was a whole culture, it was a very communal kind of vibe, back then, because you're just a bunch of teenagers, probably, or at least we couldn't get dates. We were like total nerds and losers. So it's just like every weekend sitting around, like dubbing whatever demo or whatever new album and, listening to it and, talking about what was brutal or sick or whatever, Did
you guys ever play the Pony Express Pizza in Redwood City?
No, we never did play the Pony Express. I know our friends in Immortal Fate and Plutocracy played there a bunch. I think I've only been there once, and I don't even think there was a gig. I think I actually went there and ate pizza. I was certainly aware of it, but I mean, it was a little bit difficult because, a lot of when all this was going on, I was still in high school, and I even got a car till I was 17, and so we were already playing shows at the Omni and the Stone and One Step Beyond at that point. So, it was just between my own band being kind of busy, we started playing out like right after I turned 16 in '91. A lot of my sort of parents' tolerance for my shenanigans was used up on just my own band stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
And and it also, most of us in the band at the time, when we were teenagers, we were very clean cut kids, to be honest. We were like really good kids. I mean, I think I had gotten drunk like maybe 5 or 6 times ever before I graduated high school, we were all pretty like straight and narrow. So we weren't really into like going for like the party scene kind of aspect of it. We were just all about the music. I mean, I used to I used to have a notebook. Every time I would go to a gig, I would write down all the bands that played, and I would write down every song that they played, like afterwards. I mean, I don't know why. I have no idea, nor do I know what happened to that notebook. But I was, you know, that was what I was obsessed with. I really didn't care about the other stuff, like meeting chicks or scoring drugs or any of that stuff. That all kind of came later.
It sounds like a better option. I know that that kind of lifestyle really took its toll on a lot of people. Got into it at an earlier age, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think by the time that I did become interested in more of that stuff, I was in a better position to manage it. You know what I mean? I mean, I've certainly abused drugs and alcohol. I've never gotten to the point of addiction, but you know, but I've always kind of been able to be like, you know, maybe this isn't a great idea. Maybe I should kind of back off on this for a while. Like, let's try to maintain, you know, this is getting in the way of doing the things I need to do. So, I mean, I think because I sort of waited, you know, I knew a lot of people in high school that were like dropping acid every day and were always wasted and this and that. I was, you know, I was friends with a lot of them, but I wasn't really, I just kind of like dipped my toe into that water and I was like, maybe later. So.
Do you recall having to sell tickets to play at the Stone and the Omni?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, it's really funny. There's a Facebook page about the Stone and the Omni in one step, and I just became a member of it or whatever, you know. And I was scrolling through and I was like looking. I was like, yep, there's my phone number for cheap tickets right there. Okay. Scroll down. I was like, yep, there's another flyer with my phone number on it. Yeah, so I mean, it was a trip because, you know, we kind of like got sucked into that world really quickly. You know, we had done a couple of shows, and I think we played Marsugi's in San Jose, and then we were doing a show at the Omni on like a Thursday night. You know how they would always sort of have those weekday like local band shows that, you know, 40 people would show up to, and in an 800 capacity room, it's very depressing. But basically one of the bands, I think it was Aggro, they pissed off the staff there, and they were supposed to be opening for Death. I think this would have been in the very beginning of '92, so I guess it would have been on a Human tour. And so they said, well, you guys are off the show, and they just turned to us, like, you guys want to play with Death in January or whatever? And we're like, yeah, of course. And so then that Death tour ended up getting canceled, and they felt bad for us. So they're like, well, we'll put you on with Autopsy and then with Camel. And this is, you know, January and February of '92. And so we were like, this is even better. Like, holy shit. Totally. And, you know, because we were such sort of like clean cut kids, we always would show up on time and we would always have the money, you know. Like we were very reliable. And so, and also because we were young and nerdy, we couldn't have gotten in that much trouble, you know what I mean? Like we weren't backstage causing trouble, we weren't trying to sneak beers, we weren't doing anything shady. We were just there to, you know, play death metal. So they liked us. You know, the most we asked for was like free soda. And so we ended up just right, and we were just, you know, I was like 16 or 17, so I'm just getting Coke, you know, and so they kind of kept offering us more and more shows. You know, it was like us and Immortal Fate, and so I mean until like '93 when the club started to close down, I mean we really didn't need to play anywhere else. We're like, why would we try and take whatever show at at a pizza place, because we're opening for Morbid Angel next month. Like, who gives a shit, you know? Or like, oh, we're playing with Sadist. Like, well, I'm not going to go play the fucking Pony Express when I can play the Omni and with Sadist. And it's just silly. Yeah. Totally. So that was kind of our whole world, you know? That was really the only places we played with, those three clubs when we were kids.
Well, that's great. That's great. That definitely helped you out in your career, for sure, with that.
It was interesting, and it was really cool just because you get to see a lot of the bands, you know, kind of in their prime, and you get to see them very up close and personal. And you know, I remember the first time we played with Autopsy in January of '92. You know, we showed up at whatever time they told us to, and we're just standing there watching them sound check and just, you know, kind of checking it out and kind of in awe, but also trying to absorb a little bit, you know, trying to learn a little bit. So it was interesting.
Now, your new CD, Death Revenge, is that correct? Was the album?
That is correct. Yes.
It's your first concept album, right?
It is.
And it takes us to Scotland in the late 1820s. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And with so much carnage in the world, how did you come to Scotland of all places?
I was just looking around, kind of poking around on Wikipedia for whatever lyrics I was thinking about writing, and I ended up just kind of inadvertently doing a little bit of research about the murders that Burke and Hare committed and the sort of circumstances surrounding them. And the more I read, I was like, man, this is like a story that really resonates with a lot of the imagery that the band has always used. There's grave robbery and murder and anatomy and dissection and, a lot of interesting facets to it. So, we had kind of toyed with the idea of doing a concept record for a long time, but I was always a little hesitant. I thought it might be a little bit too pretentious, for us. But it was one of those things where the more I learned about it, the more I thought, like, well, if we're ever going to do a concept album, this is tailor-made for us. And, despite the plethora of death metal songs about serial killers and stuff, there really hasn't been much done on this case. So not only is it, aesthetically perfect for what we're doing, but it's something that hasn't been beaten into the ground a million times. Jeffrey Dahmer is obviously fascinating, but I mean, it's like, I think that's been covered, Sure. It's like nobody needs any more songs about Dahmer at this point, Macabre and everybody else has got it covered. So it just was one of those things where it just kind of made sense. And, at this point, I mean, we did 3 records and then we split up for a while, and then we've come back and now we're already on our 3rd since getting back together. And it seemed like it was a good idea to try and do something a little bit different, try and do something a little bit new and stretch out a little bit. And so this was the way we decided to do it.
Is the Death Revenge Overture, is that an original track, or is it something that lifted from elsewhere?
No, it's an original track. All the symphonic and sort of film score interludes, that's all stuff that was written by myself and arranged by myself and a guy named Matt Widener, who was our bass player way back in like 1994, 95, and still a really close friend of mine. And he's somebody with a bit more classical training than I am, than I have rather. And he sort of helped me be like, like this isn't really the right register for a cello. This would go better on a viola kind of thing. Whereas I'm like, I don't know, some kind of string instrument plays this melody and then some sort of brass instrument does this. And so he really, kind of came in and helped me refine the ideas a little bit. But no, all of that stuff is all us. What
machines did you use to create those?
It's actually kind of embarrassing how amateurish the way that I write is. I have a tablature program that I use called Guitar Pro, and it's just an indispensable tool. And essentially, you write out whatever piece of music you're doing, either in notation or tablature, and then it plays it back for you in MIDI. And in addition to the guitar and drum sounds, it also has several, very low budget kind of MIDI instruments. And so I wrote everything in Guitar Pro because I don't actually write notation, I write tablature. And so, I mean, I know what an E and a G sharp and so on and so forth are, but it's just finding it on a musical staff is just it's too slow for me. Like I should have learned it when I was a kid, and then I could probably do it really quickly. But anyway, so I wrote everything there and demoed it that way. I mean, and then I took it to Matt Widener, who uses, I can't exactly remember what program it is that he uses, but it's a very high end, kind of like a $10,000 set of fake instruments. We can't afford to get an orchestra to play this shit, so we have to do it the budget way.
Sure.
And then since then, I've been, kind of slowly investing in more and more software to be able to realize more of this kind of stuff. And I actually did a soundtrack for a short film called Hell Haunt, which I did everything in a program called Absinthe by Native Instruments. So I'm kind of slowly branching out and learning to not be quite as much of a caveman,
And have you recorded any cover songs, or any bonus tracks for different markets, or any special record store day release stuff or whatever?
We have there's 2 bonus tracks that are going to come with the whatever deluxe. Relapse is in charge of whatever packaging contains what. But we did 2 bonus tracks. One is actually like a full film score piece where it's actually more like a traditional overture, in that it contains themes from every song kind of intertwined into one larger piece. And then we did a cover of Lesson in Violence by Exodus for no other reason than we just really liked the song. Like, it didn't fit with the concept or didn't have anything to do with anything.
That's cool.
But we're just big Exodus fans. And Mike actually drum techs for Tom Hunting. So I knew that Tom would get a chuckle out of it when he heard it. And I enjoyed kind of making Mike nervous. Like, all right, you got to play your boss's stuff and see what he thinks. But I'm really happy with how it came out. We did another cover song for there will be, for future stuff, we covered Metal Nights by Nasty Savage, because we were in Florida and it just kind of seemed regionally appropriate, and just a nod back to the stuff we grew up listening to.
And you recently played with Exodus in San Francisco with Pounder and I'm sorry, your drummer's name. You said he was teching for Tom. So you guys were in service to Exodus to some degree.
Yeah. We were very fortunate. My other band, Gruesome, our bass player Robin Mason, she co-manages Exodus, and so she invited us to play. With Pounder, we don't have a drummer, really. We just use session guys. So I kind of roped Mike into doing it. I was like, well, you're going to be there anyway, and we live in the same town. All your gear's in the same room as all my gear. Like, come on, man, just learn these 5 songs. So, yeah, that was a lot of fun, and it was very... for your first show to be opening up for Exodus at a sold-out gig in San Francisco, I feel very, very fortunate and very thankful to both Robin and Mike for helping make that happen.
It's a small world.
Yeah, it really is. Being in the metal scene is kind of like never leaving high school,
Absolutely. And now, does the political, just a few more questions, does the current political climate leave you here in the U.S. amuse you, or does it frighten you at all?
I don't know that it certainly doesn't amuse me. I don't know that it frightens me. But I find it kind of depressing and disappointing. I think there's a lot of hysteria, and there's a lot of people who kind of their worst instincts are getting played to, and it's sad to see that that people think that it's now okay to come out and march around in the streets with a bunch of torches, wearing swastikas, that somehow is an okay thing to happen. It's just mind-boggling to me, and it's just pretty disgusting. It doesn't, I don't know. It's certainly not where I thought the country was going to be in 2017, so I find it more saddening than anything else, I think, I don't know. I just, like I said, I just very surprised that this is where we are, as a country, and regardless of whether whoever you voted for, one of the things I find most disturbing about the current agenda, beyond all the stuff that's sort of emotionally resonant and headline grabbing, is that we seem to be systematically abandoning the concept of America's position as a world leader. We seem to be withdrawing support from NATO, withdrawing important trade agreements that keep us being a player all over the world, because that's kind of what our whole way of life in this country, whether we know it or not, has been based on. Whatever rights and conveniences and access to things that we have is because of that. And I think it's just extremely short-sighted that we are abandoning it at a very bad time, so it's a pretty fucked up thing. I could go on for a couple hours, but I'll leave it there.
Totally. And keeping in the vein of fucked up things, we now have Polish death metal band Decapitated being arrested for kidnapping and rape. Does that make touring life? Is that going to make touring life a little different for metal bands or rock bands? Is this?
I mean, I really don't think so, because I have no idea, obviously, if they're guilty or innocent. I don't know them personally. I don't know the people involved personally. I wasn't there, so I have no assumption either way. But I think that for a long time now, people have to be aware that, the world has changed, and you're not able to just get away with stuff. You know what I mean? When I was in my late 20s, I was a terrible significant other, because I grew up commoner, never getting laid, and then finally I was in a band and I was able to actually get laid, so I just would fuck anybody. But my girlfriend at the time never really found out, because it's just the internet and everything else. You know what I mean? Lives weren't as public back then. And if you think that you can do something without consequences and that nobody's watching, you're probably mistaken. Whether it's, rape or sexual assault or saying something inappropriate or whatever, you have to really, if you think you can do that with impunity, like you really have another thing coming. And also, if you're in a band and you want to go out on tour and get laid, that's great. That's completely fine. But if you think that you're entitled to it because you're in a band, then you deserve whatever's coming to you, I don't think that it's really going to change anything much, because, this is just such a weird, random, outlying event, It's not like it's happening all the time or anything like that. So, anyway.
Well, I've taken up almost a half an hour of your time. I have more questions for you, but I know you got a life, and
I think so.
Probably other people to talk to, but I think I will try to catch up with you. You have a big tour coming up with some cool bands, Necrot, as well as who else are you playing with?
We're out. We're just doing the West Coast.
Okay.
We're out for 5 or 6 days with Black Dahlia Murder, Suffocation, Decrepit Birth, and Necrot. So I think between Decrepit and Necrot and us, California is very well represented there. But yeah, we're doing Seattle, Eugene, Lake Tahoe, Petaluma, and then the Ozfest, Knotfest weekend thing, and then the show in Phoenix. So for us, we're just kind of jumping on for a minute, and then we're working on some other stuff that is very close to being, done and finalized and ready to announce for a little bit later, where we're going to go out and play our own shows and be able to sort of not play like a festival style set like we are. But still, it's going to be a really fun week.
Well, Killer, thank you so much for your time, and have a great day.
Yeah, you got it. Cheers.